Hey guys, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 2, where we're going to look at two forms of linear equations, starting with slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is a very popular form. I like to call this the graphing form because it's easiest to graph lines when they're in slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form reads like this: y is equal to mx plus b. And m, we know, is the slope. And b is called the y-intercept. So let's talk about what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept of a line is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. It's the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So if we have a line that looks like this, the point where the line crosses the y-axis is right there. That's called the y-intercept. And a little bit about the y-intercept, since it is on the y-axis, and it always will be on the y-axis, hence the point where the line crosses the y-axis, the ordered pair of the y-intercept will always read 0, y. Because since it is on the y-axis, the x value of that ordered pair is 0. And there will be a number for y. That number for y in slope-intercept form is b. That number for y, that y value where the line crosses the y-axis, that number, that is b in y equals mx plus b. So first, let's start some easy stuff. Let's start by practicing how to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form if we're given a slope and a y-intercept. Okay, so we're given the slope and the y-intercept, and we need to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So if the slope is 2 and the y-intercept is -1, well, there's your m and there's your b. So y is equal to 2x plus -1, or we could just write -1. If our slope is -3/5 and our y-intercept is 4, here's our m, here's our b, y is equal to -3/5 x plus 4. Notice how this one I wrote plus because my y-intercept was +4. Here I wrote minus because my y-intercept was -1. So I would write plus -1, but why do we write plus negative? It's just -1. So let's take a look at number 3. Our slope is -3. There's my m. My y-intercept is 2. There's my b. So y is equal to -3x plus 2. Take a look over at number 5 because it has a y-intercept of 0. I'd like you to see what that looks like. My slope is 1/4, so that's my m. My y-intercept is 0, so that's my b. So we would write y is equal to 1/4 x plus 0, or the more simplified way is actually y is equal to 1/4 x. You don't have to write plus 0 because anything plus 0 is itself. Now, if we're given a graph and we are asked to identify the slope and the y-intercept from the graph, well, you already know how to identify the slope. I kind of showed you what the y-intercept was. Now we're going to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So let's take a look at line number 7. To find the slope of the line using the graph, you grab two pretty points and you travel your rise over your run. So here's my rise and here's my run to get from one point to the other. Slope is positive. We're rising 1, 2, 3, and we're running 1. So rise over run. My y-intercept, my b, which is my y-intercept, that's where the graph crosses the y-axis. This is the y-axis, by the way. That is right there where my graph is crossing the y-axis. That ordered pair is 0, 1. Let's see, 0, do we count here? That's -1, -2, -3, -4. So that's 0, -4. That is a 0, comma, -4, -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, that's that ordered pair. So my y-intercept is -4, because that is the y value of the point that crosses the y-axis on the line. And if we write that equation, that's y is equal to 3 over 1x minus 4, or we can just say y is equal to 3x minus 4. Let's take a look at number 8. Now, first thing we want to do is find the slope. So we go from one pretty point to the other. Notice that the slope is negative because our line is going down. So our rise, which is, let's draw this 90-degree angle. Our rise is dropping, but that's okay. So we are rising or dropping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6. And we are running 1, 2, 3, 4. So 6 over 4, 4, which reduces to -3 over 2. Our y-intercept, which is where the graph crosses the y-axis, that ordered pair is 0, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 0, comma, +7, which means our b is +7. And to write that in slope-intercept form, that would be y is equal to -3/2 x plus 7. So now I'd like you to try 9, 11, 13, and 15. And what you're going to be required to do is to write the equation of the line given the graph, and you're writing the equation obviously in slope-intercept form. So you can't write it in slope-intercept form until you find the slope and until you find the y-intercept. And once you have found the slope and the y-intercept, you can write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Pause the video and try the odd problems now. Okay, so let's go over these answers. For number 9, your equation should be y is equal to 2/5 x minus 3. For number 11, it should be y is equal to -1/4 x plus 5. For 13, it should be y is equal to -2x minus 3. And for 15, y is equal to 1/3 x minus 2. If any of these gave you a hard time, make sure you mark them and ask about them at the end of this video or in class. So in this section, we worked on taking a graph and writing and introducing how to write these equations of these graphs of these lines in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Now we're going to learn about a new form for writing linear equations, and we kind of interchange and use these different forms back and forth. So let's take a look at what's next. So another form besides slope-intercept form is standard form. So why do we care about standard form? Well, because we have to be able to recognize it, and because there are going to be situations where you are going to use standard form, and I'll talk to you about those as they come up throughout the year. So what is standard form? Well, standard form is a form of writing linear equations that looks like this. ax plus by is equal to c, where a, b, and c are integers, where a, b, and c are integers, and usually the a is a positive integer, okay? So a, b, and c are integers. Equations written in standard form can be converted to slope-intercept form by solving for y. So that's why we learned how to solve equations for specific variables, because one of the things you have to be able to do easily is to convert from standard into slope-intercept form. So I know you're probably thinking, well, why do we even have standard form then if we're just going to convert? Well, sometimes you need something in standard form. Sometimes you prefer it in slope-intercept form. And as you get better and better with this, you'll start to see when you want which one. So let's practice writing an equation from standard into slope-intercept form. So here we have an equation in standard form, 2x plus y equals 3. You can tell it's in standard form because it follows that ax plus by is equal to c. Notice how it's equal to a number. That's the whole standard form. And your x and y are on the left or right side, but together, okay? They're together, and they have coefficients. If we want to change it into slope-intercept form, we need to solve for y. Solving for y gets standard into y equals mx plus b. I'll say that again. If you start with standard form and you solve for y, you're going to get y equals mx plus b. That sounds important. If you start in standard form and you solve for y, you're going to get slope-intercept form, or y equals mx plus b. Solving for y means isolating y. So I'm going to start by zeroing out the 2x. 2x take away 2x is 0. That leaves me with y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. Or 3 minus 2x, but we want to write it in this beautiful mx plus b format. So negative 2x plus 3. Now, how is that helpful to us? Well, now it's so much easier to see our slope and our y-intercept than it was when it was in standard form. You can kind of see the 2 and the 3 happening here, but really you can see it much better. You know that m is negative 2, and you know that b is 3. And when we learn how to graph, that's going to be really helpful. The fact that in slope-intercept form, we're able to quickly pull the slope and pull the y-intercept. In standard form, you cannot quickly pull the slope and the y-intercept, so it's better to convert it. So let's convert number 3 into slope-intercept form. So right now we're in standard form, and we want to change it into y equals mx plus b. So what should we do? In order to do that, we need to solve for y. We need to isolate y to go from here to here. So let's isolate y. Let's start by zeroing out the x. You're always going to zero out the x. So we end up with negative 3y is equal to 12 minus x. Actually, I'm going to write that as negative 3y is equal to negative x plus 12, which means the same thing. Now, to get y by itself, I'm going to divide by negative 3 to everybody. Notice how I divided by negative 3 to get y by itself, which means the whole problem on the right had to be divided by negative 3. And so that you see your negative 3's cancel and you end up with y is equal to, okay? Right here, we have a negative divided by a negative, and that is 1/3 x. And it's 1/3 because the coefficient of x is a 1. And notice how your negative divided by your negative makes a positive. And I'm writing it instead of x over 3 or 1x over 3, I'd like to write it as 1/3 x. We're trying to model mx. So x over 3, 1x over 3, or 1/3 x. These are all the same thing, but this one is nicer for hitting it as slope-intercept form. So 1/3 x plus 12 divided by negative 3, which is minus 4. Okay, so take some time to think about this again, how we got the negative divided by negative to make positive, how we got 1 over 3 or 1/3, and how we got 12 divided by negative 3 to make our minus 4. Notice that now I can quickly pull the slope of 1/3 and the y-intercept of negative 4 of this line, which here it was in standard form, here it is in slope-intercept form. It's the same line, it's just this is written in one format and this is written in another format, but they mean the same thing. And this format is easier to grab quickly, that slope and that y-intercept. All right, let's do one more example together for our notes. We've got 4x minus y is equal to 0. We want to change this into y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form. So let's start by zeroing out the 4x. That gives me negative y is equal to negative 4x plus 0, which we don't need to write plus 0. Let's divide by that negative 1 in front of the y. And that gives me y is equal to positive 4x. Notice that we can pull our slope is 4 and our y-intercept has got to be 0 because there's no number behind 4x. Okay, pause the video and try 2, 4, and 6, and then I will give you answers. All right, so we have some answers here for 2. Ooh, I also gave you an answer for 8. All right, so we have answers for 2, 4, and 6. If any of these gave you a tough time, or if you see that your answers don't match, make sure you ask questions at the end of this video or in class. So to end this video, we want to take a look at the following problem on the next page. It says to determine the equation that best represents the line shown on the graph. So we have a line here on the graph, and you have 4 options in standard form for the equation of this line, okay? So what do we know about, given the graph, what can we pull? We can pull the slope, and we can pull the y-intercept. So if we can pull the slope of this line and the y-intercept of this line, then we can build the equation of this line in y equals mx plus b, okay? Once we've done that, then we can change these into slope-intercept form to figure out which one's the right one. This is a great PSAT, SAT type question where you kind of have to take a few steps to get to your answer. So let's do this first one together. Let's pull the slope and the y-intercept. So to pull the slope, I want 2 pretty points. So let me grab this one, and this one's fine. Okay, so I've got 2 pretty points there, and I can travel the slope. So travel, make my 90-degree angle, or my letter L. Okay, travel the slope to get my slope. So my rise is 1. And my run, 1, 2, 3, is 3. So my slope is 1 over 3. It is positive because I went up and my line is increasing from left to right. So my slope is 1/3. And my y-intercept, which also is this point right here, that's the y-intercept of the line. Okay, that point is 1, 2. That point is 0, -2. So B is -2. So in y equals mx plus b format, my line is y equals 1/3 x minus 2. That is the equation of this line. Now you need to figure out which of these standard forms, when converted to slope-intercept form, is going to give me that equation. One of these standard forms is the same as this slope-intercept form. Go ahead and try that now. So now that you have converted these standard forms into slope-intercept form, the correct answer should be B. That is the correct standard form that converts to the same slope-intercept form. So this is the equation of this line. This is also the equation of this line. These mean the same exact thing. So I'd like you to try 14 and 15, and I'll give you those answers now so that you have them. D is the answer for 14, and C is the answer for 15. So using 13 as a guide, see if you can come up with those 2 answers and ask questions if you have them at any time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for learning.